In the last couple of videos, we dealt with a user logging in, logging out, changing password, and resetting their password. The biggest thing though is, how does a user initially get an account? Well, to do that, they need to register an account. So in that case, we're going to go ahead and go through creating a registration system so that your user can log in. One of the specific requirements we have is we not only want the user to set their username, but we want them to set their email as well, because we're going to create an alert system inside of our crypto manager so that whenever events happen that we specify, we get an alert via an email. We also want to get a text message, but we'll cover that in a future video. In this case, during the registration, we want them to add their email address as well as their username and password. So we're going to go about setting to do that. Unfortunately, Django doesn't offer a lot by default to do registration, but once you dig into the code a little bit and try to figure out how things work, you can easily create a registration view with a minimal amount of effort, and we'll show you how to do that here. The first thing that we need to do though is to use a built-in form, and we want to inherit from it. This is something that Django offers to make it easier for you to create users. So we'll first dive in and create a new file, accounts/forms.py. And we're going to do an import, and we're going to import the user from Django Contrib Auth models, and we're going to import two things from Django Contrib Auth forms. These are a lot of helpers in dealing with users in with the Contrib Auth system. First is the user creation form. This is a form class that you can use in order to do creation of new users. Then there's the username field that comes with some extra validation for your users. What we want to do is we want to actually inherit from the user creation form. The reason we want to do that is the user creation form only requires password and username. We want to tweak it so that it requires us to do an email address as well. So we'll create our new class, user create form, inherit from user creation form. We'll have a class meta in there, and we'll set the model to user. We'll set the fields to username and email, saying that based on the user, we want the username and email field. The user creation form has password set already, so it's just going to automatically inherit doing that. And then we want to set the field classes of username to be username field. If we don't, it's going to default back to the character field, and we want that little extra validation to happen since we're overriding the class meta. So that's really all we need for the user creation form or user create form, because most of the heavy lifting is done in the user creation form that Django offers. The next step is to jump into our view and start working on that. So we'll open up accounts, views, and we'll do some imports. We're going to import HTTP response redirect. That's what's going to happen after we have a successful form submission for the creation of our user. We're going to pull in our form view generic view, so that because we're dealing with a form, and this just makes it a lot easier. We're also going to use the login and authenticate functions that come in Django Contrib Auth. The authenticate function actually authenticates a user. It double checks the username and the password, and then the login actually logs the user in and sets the user to the current request object. And then finally, we're importing the user create form that we just created. So first, we'll start with our class declaration of class user registration view. We'll inherit from form view, and we'll start by setting the template name to accounts register. Then we'll set our success URL equal to /, so the index page. Since we don't have a home page yet, we can't do like a reverse lookup to try to get the current URL, so we'll just deal with / for now. We'll set our form class to the user create form that we created earlier. And then we really only have to deal with one method to override, because everything will work just fine with form invalid. We're just going to set a form valid. Then we're going to have a saved user equals form.save. So at this point, the user has been created in our system, and it's gone through all the correct creation and stuff that it needs to go through inside of the form.save of the user creation form that we inherited from. The next thing that we do is we get the user object after we have authenticated our user with a username equal to the saved user.username, and we're going to use the password from the data that we just cleaned in our form cleaned data password 1. So now we're using the password that the user has submitted from the form, and we're using the username from the user object, and we have now authenticated the user, and now we're going to log them in using the login function with a self.request and passing in user. Finally, we're going to return a response redirect to the getSuccessURL function call, which will call and get the success URL from above. And so it's just going to go back home once the user has successfully registered. It's fairly simple and straightforward reading through what's going on. We're creating a new view. It's a form view. If it's valid, we're saving the user, we're authenticating them, we're logging them in, and then we're sending them to the home page so they can be about their merry way and doing what they need to do. Now there's just a couple of extra steps left in order to get our system going. We need to add a URL for the registration. So we go into our URLs file and we'll add in our register view. We're using the user registration view.asView. Since the template name is set in the view itself, we don't need to do an override in this case. We need to don't forget our import above, and we're good for our URLs. Next thing we need to do is the template. So we're going to do open our accounts, templates, accounts, register.html that we set. And we're just going to have a generic template that has extending from base. We have our block content, a form, a CSRF token. We're doing form.sp, so we get the paragraph representation of our form. And then we have a submit button with so that we can actually register a user. Then the last and final thing that we need to do before we can test this out is we need to open up our login.html again and add the URL link to our register. So we're going to do URL register, and that's going to be able to look up the URL for the registration link that we just created, and we're ready to go. Our system is now set up to be able to do registration along with all the other stuff that we're doing. So now if we'll just run our server and go into our browser, we're ready to try to either log in or register. So we'll just click on register. We get our registration form, do a username, do an email, and a password. And once we register, you see we're on our local host. We're in the / so it redirected properly. If we go ahead and log out, we can log in as our admin user and jump into the Django admin, go to users, and here we have 2 users available. Click into the someone user, and we have our password set, we have a username, and we have the email address set. So with that, we're done. We have created a user registration system. We're logging in, we're logging out, we're managing our password, and that's it. Like we're kind of done with the total life cycle of dealing with a user. I want you to join us for our next video where we're going to deal with editing profile data and having a profile for your user. I want to thank you for your time and have a great day.